Hello and welcome to the next episode of DDR, a podcast all about your favorite Drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. Justin here, and in this episode we'll be diving deep into Chapter 8 of Homeland, titled Kindred, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
And my name is Jeffrey. One of the things that we like to do for all the huge fans of Dungeons & Dragons out there who might be listening to our podcast is to look for pieces within the chapter and how they relate to the tabletop game, and then delve into the dungeon.
All right. Following the show is easy. Grab a copy of the book, read the next chapter, and tune in every week. Remember, we want to hear your thoughts too, so make sure to share. You can share those at drizzdoneright@gmail.com.
Also, we want to make sure that you don't forget we have a Discord.
How could they forget that we have a Discord? We talk about it all the time. Why aren't you guys there yet?
Get in there. How do you get in there? The link is in the description of the podcast episode. Just click it or copy and paste it. You know what? If you have trouble finding it, make sure you email us at drizzdoneright@gmail.com and we'll personally send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
People that make interesting points or go above and beyond will receive a shout out from the show. Because honestly, we love to mention you all. One thing I wanted to mention is that a couple of weeks ago, we had a listener from Japan named Hiraku send us an email and join our Discord. They shared a picture of the books that they had, and much to our delight, Hiraku must have been telling all of their friends because Japan is now the second largest country from our listening audience with 6% of our listeners, tying it with Australia. Can you believe that, Justin?
That is insane. That is insane. You would think that, I guess we do have most people in the U.S. listening. That would be really cool. Most of our listeners are in the U.S., is what I should say. Most of the U.S. is listening.
One day.
One day.
This means, though, that the next time that me and you have a layover in Japan, there is a legitimate chance that someone could walk up to us and be like, hey, your guys' voices sound very familiar. We could randomly run into listeners on our show from half a world away. So thank you, Hiraku, and thank you, Japan. Speaking about international, we have 14 different countries besides the United States that make up our listening audience. You are all amazing. Thank you so much. That is unbelievable.
It's true. You guys really are very amazing. I don't mean to throw Sevik the Grey under the bus here, but he put out like something else cool that's going on in our Discord here. He put out just some like feelers to see who would be interested in possibly playing a mini campaign that he's putting together, a little 2 or 3 session D&D game set as mercenaries. I say mercenaries because I don't know how to pronounce it. So, mercenaries in Menzoberranzan. So, if you're interested in that, make sure you guys jump on the Discord and hit up Sevik. Sorry, Sevik.
That's more like throwing him in front of the bus, not under it. You put the billboard up and everybody's watching, and then bam, Sevik gets hit with a whole lot of responsibilities. Love you, buddy.
A few times I was thinking like, if I just like put myself out there, maybe I could make a few bucks being a DM or something like that. Great opportunity here, Sevik. If you start having 50 people coming at you like DM our game, and it's like, well, give me a few bucks,
right? And if you start a Discord channel for the D&D game, you go ahead and let us know. We will find the link to that description and join in.
Oh yeah. So, anyway, Jeffrey, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. I, been doing a little smoking over the weekend. Did a nice set of ribs.
And, I was going to say, what kind of smoking? Okay.
Well, the meat kind. That still sounds horrible when I stop to delineate there. But they were the same recipe that I used when you guys came down and we did Helmfest.
Right.
It's what is it? The last meal ribs. They're called, I think it's AmazingRibs.com. And the guy's named Meathead. Nice. I was like, it's a really great recipe. You go in, when it breaks it down, you click, it says use barbecue sauce. It's got a hyperlink. You click that and it gives you like 12 different sauces you can build, where you can buy them. So it's like, I kind of went crazy, made my own rub, made my own barbecue sauce, did the smoking, nice. Got to use my turkey fryer again, fried up some wings.
I still have
it out of the park.
I still have a piece of that fryer. I'll have to get that to you. I have the little hanger thing. Yeah, so if you're missing that, I still have that.
I didn't even think about it because we did wings, and I went to go find. I guess it's like a seafood boil pot, that they slice inside of it. Couldn't find it. Everyone's like, "Hey, we'll order it to the store," and I was like, "No, I need it by tomorrow." Like any person who plans things out well in advance, I waited till the last minute, and I got to find one.
Right.
So, tapping into my restaurant background, I just went and got like they call it a rescue spoon.
Oh yeah.
In it, you just go in, and it's like I've been burned by oil so many times. I'll just pick them out one by one, right?
Just use your bare hands. You're good with it.
Just lick the tip, bang, get it real fast. The key is to be in and out before your nerves know they're hurt.
Exactly, or leave it in there long enough that your nerves are just burned up and you can't feel it anyway.
You too can look like a yahweh.
I just have to put this out there. You mentioned Helmfest, and people were probably like, "What? What's that?" We used to play. Speaking to our listeners, we used to play Betrayal Legacy, and how is it? 12, 13, 14, even 15?
15 episodes because it's lucky 13. Yep.
13.
Whatever you call it.
So it's a Betrayal Legacy. It's a legacy board game, and there were essentially like 13 sessions that you would play through with the same group. So it was a group of me, Jeffrey, and our wives. And we got to, what was it, the 11th one? We finished the 11th one, and we were basically saying, like, we only have 2 left. We need to, like, have a party out of this. And so we had something, we called it Helmfest because there's an artifact, I guess is the best word I can use for it, an artifact in the game called the Helm. And you don't disrespect the helm
until it tells you to.
And you start writing your name on it. It's just like, oh man, what are we doing? But such a fun game. One of my favorite board games that I've ever played. So that's
it was nice. We went full nerd, and for people who are like, whoa, term nerd, I embrace it. I love it. We went full nerd. We dressed up in our house colors because you get a family house. We made foods that were based around like horror theme. That's how I got last meal ribs. The ribs so good you'd want them for your last meal. We did the little demon eye devil eggs, used the avocado instead of the egg yolk.
Yeah.
So they came out green. You put a little olive on it. You get the pupil, little red lines for the demon eyes. They're always like they need more moisturizer.
Oh, and we did those brain hemorrhage shots. Those were so gross.
They looked horrible, but you know what? They tasted pretty good.
They did. All right, Jeffrey, we're in episode 8 here, right? Let's go ahead and jump right into the Drizzt.
The Drizzt is that part of the show where we're going to take a look at this week's chapter and give you the Drizzt of it.
Love it.
This chapter, it hits the ground running right out of the gate as we find Zaknafein and Drizzt engaged in an intense training session. Zak is pushing the assault relentlessly, forcing Drizzt to stay on his feet on the defense and giving him no room to breathe. Drizzt goes through the routine of parry and block, attempting to turn the tide, but notices a lapse in the routine and receives a sharp slap to the thigh from Zak as a reminder of what happens when you make a mistake in combat. You think it's a full hit point when he slaps him in the thigh there?
I mean, I don't know. How many slaps would it take in the thigh to kill someone?
I'm not willing to find out. Sounds like a horrible way to go. Drizzt is concerned because the cross-down parry defeats the attack, but it doesn't allow him any room to gain ground in the battle. Mm-hmm. Drizzt angrily reminds Zak that his lesson was that every move should bring an advantage. Zaknafein matched the anger as he goaded him to finish the lesson. Every move should bring an advantage or take away a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
Zak growls for the lesson to continue and presses forward so furiously that Drizzt isn't sure if it's a lesson or a true attack. It soon became clear to him that Zaknafein was going to use his actions to reinforce the words of his lesson. Zak says out loud that the double thrust maneuver is coming again, and Drizzt is ready with the proper cross-down parry. But he only follows through with one blade and attempts to use his other blade to throw a devious counter of his own. Zaknafein sees it coming from a mile away and pulls Drizzt off balance. As Drizzt tries to regain his balance, Zak spins a heel into the back of his knee, knocks him to the ground. Drizzt can feel a small trickle of blood as Zaknafane's maneuver left him standing in the dominant position, wondering out loud if there was anything more to say with his sword tip right there against the neck.
Now, see, with the drop of blood, that might be any loss of blood. That's got to be a hit point, right?
Yeah, I mean, one hit point is not a lot to give up to learn a lesson so valuable. The parry is wrong. That's Drizzt's response. Got the sword to the throat, little blood trickle going down, and his response was, the parry is wrong.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
Zaknafane laughs at the stubborn response from his star pupil. Zak marvels at Drizzt's chosen weapons, the dual scimitars with the curving blades that enhanced the dizzying flow of his sweeping battle style. Like that right there, R.A. Salvatore, when he writes combat to me, I've mentioned it earlier, it is a beautiful ballet. It is artwork. Right.
Yeah.
And like that line that he put there, the sweeping style, it really does fit, because what I picture again is the whirling dervish, the spin around, swiping, slicing, and that fluidity of combat. It's beautiful.
Now, when you say the dizzying flow of his sweeping battle style, who's getting dizzy? The person that's watching him or Drizzt?
Well, no, it's got to be the person watching, because Drizzt is evidently a master of spotting while spinning.
Right.
Like, he's on point like a ballet star, man.
Like as I get older, I find that I get dizzy so much quicker. Like when I was little, it was like, I'd jump on the swing and do that like spinning thing. You wrap the chains up and then you just like let it go and you're just like going, and it's fun to be dizzy. But now I get like, now that I'm older, my kids are like, spin me around in a circle. I'm like, okay, I do like 2 passes, not even like 1 pass. And I'm like, that's enough.
We used to have the merry-go-round of death. I don't know if you've ever played on those as a kid, but we would all like lay on the spinning wheel and you guys try to hold on to the metal circle.
And the people on the outside are just
spin you. Until you fly off and there's only one person. It was stupid, but so much fun.
I would die so quick on those things now.
Right. It would just be a vomit run.
Yep.
So already, Drizzt is capable of besting half of the members at the academy. Just a child. How magnificent might he become with more years of training? Zaknafane's running through this and he realizes that this child's temperament is indeed different from the average Drow. He possesses a spirit of innocence with not a hint of maliciousness. This realization sparks pride inside of Zaknafane as he sees his own values reflected in Drizzt. Drizzt saw the connection from the other side of the circle, knowing that Uncle Zak was different from the other Dark Elves, even those inside of his own family. It's especially Breeza, who exhibited a zealous, almost blind ambition in the mysterious religion of Lolth. Zak was even able to smile, which is definitely different than Matron Malice, who only ever spoke commands of service to Drizzt. Unlike most Drow, Zak seemed content with his station in life. He's even known to laugh, which is, as I've taken so far into 7.5 chapters we're going through, getting into the 8th here, not a very Drow-like response to most things.
No.
Not a Drow comedy club in the background of Menzo Berenson doing a whole lot of business.
I'm pretty sure they made a point in the chapter to say that Zak was the only Drow that he saw smile, right?
Yeah, but it made me chuckle because in chapter 7 we touched base that Alton was spinning around expecting to see Massage laughing at his his failure.
Right.
But it really does. It wouldn't be a mirthful laughter.
Right.
So I guess more like, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's laughter, but it doesn't seem like it meets the requirements of like a Robin Williams belly laugh.
Right.
Zak praises Drizzt, who is discouraged because in a battle, the lack of a proper parry would have resulted in death. This is why they train. Zak even lets Drizzt in on the secret that he knew the twist that Drizzt tried because he himself had failed while trying to use it in training. And he even throws in a sly wink, which again doesn't seem to be most Drow's approved form of communication.
Right.
They think alike, but Zaknafane benefits from 4 centuries of experience. Zak's trained the whole army of House Do'Urden, and 10 times that when he was a master of melee in Melee Magthier, including Risen, all Drizzt's sisters, and both of his brothers.
Ooh.
Right? Drizzt is he's caught off guard by the term both, because he's only ever known Dynan, having only never been told about Nalfane. Zack explains that Nalfane fell in battle the very night Drizzt's first breath was drawn. Was it dwarves or vicious gnomes that killed him? Perhaps he fell while defending the city against monsters, or some opponent even more foul. Wicked elves from the surface. I love how they paint the dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else in this world is like, those wicked Drow, and the Drow are like, but we're so innocent.
Yeah.
All these other wicked people up there with the sun.
I'm so excited to see his first interaction with the surface elves.
Zack can't. Well, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say just at least his first friendly interaction.
Yeah.
Because his first interaction probably isn't going to be so friendly, but eventually he's going to be like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting
to see the values collide, right? Perception versus reality.
Yeah.
But Zack can't take any more and tells him that his oldest brother was killed by a Drow.
Ooh.
But he can't bring himself to explain any further. Their training montage blended into days, days into months, months into more months, as they fought until they were exhausted, only to drag themselves back to the training floor again as soon as they were able. Zack found joy in these days for the first time in years. In his third year of training, Drizzt was able to extend their duel for hours, sometimes even taking the offensive finally, in many of their contests. Finally, someone who had the potential to become his fighting equal, speaking of Zaknafame, in a very un-Drow-like manner, laughter often accompanied the clash of swords. Drizzt grew tall, straight, attentive, eager, and intelligent. Even the masters of the academy would find it hard to hold him in a stalemate. And these thoughts, they thrilled Zaknafame. Until he remembered that the academy also served to reinforce the precepts of Drow life and what they would do to this wonderful student. And this is reinforced when Matron Malice walked in, a reminder of the Drow world outside of the practice room. Drizzt showed her proper respect at Zack's urging, keeping his previous boyish outbursts at bay. Matron Malice didn't doubt Drizzt's prowess with the blade, but questioned his heart and proper warrior attitude. And man, you know, when you try to put Drow and world and and Drizzt's prowess with the blade, sometimes those S's and W's really run together. Zack understood that Malice wanted him emotionally hardened, was looking for an excuse to take him away from Zack and instill this attitude at the hands of a less talented yet crueler individual. Maybe like Dynan.
Mm-hmm.
He refused to risk it. He valued their time too much. So Zack did the only thing he could think of. He charged Drizzt with his weapons bared, demanding a show from the young warrior. Zack comes in with a fury that Drizzt had never seen before. Even more than while reinforcing that cross-down parry.
Yeah, this was actually a pretty scary part. It was just like, oh man, is he actually gonna if he knocks him down, is he actually gonna hurt him? Or what's going on? And yeah.
Because in the training montage and the training that they had done leading up to it, there's always a lesson to be learned. There's a purpose to the violence.
Right.
And it's not to wound, it's to teach. That's why he slapped him in the thigh.
Right.
But now he gets the feeling like, man, is he mad at me? Is he gonna kill me? What's going on?
Yeah.
So sparks flew as the swords rang out. Zack worked both of Drizzt's scimitars out wide. Slices that would have killed him if Drizzt wasn't fast enough. Zack managed to draw blood with a weapon that Drizzt failed to account for. A crushing blow to the nose with a well-placed boot.
Ouch.
Forcing Drizzt to dive back and keep a safe distance until he could realign his senses. It was really cool because that's the part where you're dueling and you're training and you're used to okay, cool, high swipe, high block, low stab, parry to the side. But Zack now fights dirty and kicked him in the face.
Yeah.
So he had reinforcing the idea of what's coming. He has no idea what's happening here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Zack presses harder, demanding Drizzt show her. He lit Drizzt up with the telltale flames of fairy fire, making him an easier target. Drizzt responded by dropping a globe of darkness over them both. That's such a cool response.
It is.
You know, like fairy fire lights you up and it makes you,
Like,
you know, we'll get into it later, but it makes you easier to attack.
right.
And so Drizzt is like, you know what? I'd rather blind both of us than
Right.
have you see that much more.
There you go.
So feeling the incoming strike, not seeing it because they're in the globe, Drizzt decides to drop low to the ground and luckily avoided the swipe of Zack, who had levitated 10 feet in the air and struck down. It would have been a face level swipe. Anger suddenly replaces confusion. Drizzt lets his rage lead him back into the fight. He presses on with wondrous two-handed attacks, forcing Zack to retreat for a dozen steps, back into the darkness. Drizzt returned the earlier favor and managed to drive a boot into Zack Nafane's chest, blasting the breath out of his lungs. As they fought out of the darkness, Zack saw the look of hatred on Drizzt's face, and it sickened him.
Yeah.
But they had no choice. This fight, it's got to be ugly. It's got to be real. And it's like, I found that to really be like the reverse flip of how Drizzt sees it. You know, like he sees the wholesomeness and the happiness in Drizzt, and he's buoyed by that prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're fighting, and he sees the Drow part of Drizzt come out,
right,
with the hatred and anger on his face, and it's like
the exact parts that Zack doesn't want to see. You know,
yeah,
he's trying not to build up those type of emotions or those personality traits in him, and that's
except in this moment now, he's literally trying to evoke that because he wants Malice to see
That's
it.
true. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah.
So Zack, he then settled into a defensive rhythm to let the young Drow expend his energy and fury. He feinted openings where there were none, baiting Drizzt's thrust, cuts, and kicks. Zack understood that even though Malice may be impressed by the physical display, there was more needed to convince her that Drizzt was ready. He had to keep her from conversing with Drizzt in any length of time because she would not approve of his attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Zack realized that Drizzt was tiring finally, although partially exaggerated. Zack pretended to twist his ankle, and Drizzt could not resist the opening. The thrust came in a flash, but Zack Nafane had expected this, slapped the scimitar from Drizzt's hands with a short crosscut. Drizzt cried out in triumph as he had set up his own deception and knifed in over top with his remaining scimitar coming in over Zack's left shoulder. But Zack was already down on his knees, allowing the blow to cut harmlessly high. Zack sprung up to his feet and led with the hilt of his sword, catching Drizzt with a right cross, stunning the young warrior and causing him to stand still for too long of a moment, dropping the remaining scimitar, staring with glossy eyes that didn't blink. When I first read that, I thought that he was disappointed. You know, like Drizzt was like caught off guard, like, oh my goodness, like I failed. It's like Zack then responds, a feint within a feint, explained. And then Drizzt dropped unconsciously to the floor. So I was like, well, here I was thinking that, like, you know, Drizzt is like, wow, how did I not see that coming? Like, that I was so dumb. And then Zack responds, I guess, feeling the same way, except Drizzt responded that way because he was unconscious on his feet. That right hand knocked him out.
Yep.
Malice finally agreed that Drizzt was ready for the academy, where Dynan would be leaving for soon, and Vierna was already at, teaching as a mistress in Iraq Tinalith. A high honor to have two children serving as masters at the same time. Malice did not try to hide the fact that favors were called in, favors that were owed. Zack Nafane couldn't understand why, surely not for the protection of Drizzt, and so she laid out that the top 3 houses would have no fewer than 4 children in the academy in the next 2 decades. Zack Nafane saw that she had high aspirations, wondering how high House Do'Urden would climb under her guidance. Malice explained that they would be fools not to learn more of their rivals. After all, they boasted more power than all but a handful of other houses. Surely there were easier targets higher up on the list, which, you know, would also serve to benefit House Do'Urden. So then that part was really kind of neat because it's a little bit of a backplay between Malice and Zack, where Zack's giving her this like sarcastic response of like, oh wow, how high we could climb. You know, telling her like, look out from behind you too, because like that's what we did to House Devere. Right. And Malice responds with, look, we're house number 9 right now, and to be honest, we could crush most of the houses above us. So if you're behind us, you're not looking at us. You're looking higher up for easier targets.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Later, as Drizzt was nursing the pain in his jaw, Zaknafein advised him to speak less so that the healing might happen faster. That made me chuckle because that's a
Oh
very
yeah,
tough guy thing to say. Like, you imagine you got your jaw broken and it's like maybe wired. It's not obviously damage isn't that bad, but it's like, oh,
right.
it's all wired up, and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel great. And the guy's like, well, if you did less speaking, it would heal quicker. Hopefully that's a lesson that would serve Drizzt well around Matron Malice moving forward. Drizzt was under the impression that they were becoming friends, him and Zaknafein, so Zak had to scold him and say, think clearly. Do you believe that Matron Malice would approve of such a bonding between her weapons master and her prized youngest son?
Ooh.
You are a drow of noble birth. You may have no friends.
Let's see. They already knew that, right? Did Drizzt already know that he was his dad?
I don't think Drizzt knows. I think that Zaknafein knows. Everybody in the house kind of knows.
Okay.
Malice probably definitely knows. But Drizzt doesn't even know he had a second brother. So I'm pretty sure he doesn't know Zaknafein's his father. Because earlier he refers to him as Uncle Zak.
Right.
So then Drizzt feels as if he's been slapped in the face. Because, him and Zak have been having this bond. Like I said, he refers to him as Uncle Zak. He loves their time together. And then here's Zaknafein being like, you may have no friends. Oh, it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Drizzt, heart in his hands, feeling a little sad. Zak turns in and says, none openly, at least. He lays a comforting hand on the young Drow's shoulder. Friends equate to vulnerability, inexcusable vulnerability. At least we two know who we are. And yet, somehow to Drizzt, that just didn't seem enough. Like, it's weird that it starts on such a happy high note in that chapter with them being playfully slapping back and forth, and then it ends and you're like, oh my, you just kind of want to give the little Drow a hug and be like, buddy, I'll be your friend.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. All right. Well, there we have the Drizzt. Let's go ahead and kick this up into the dim light reel. The dim light reel, it's where we cast darkness on our favorite parts of the chapter and dim light all of our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. So, I think my dim light for this, again, there were a number within this chapter that were just really cool. But I think the dimmest dim light for me has to have been when Zaknafein accidentally revealed to Drizzt that he had another brother that he didn't know about. When he's talking, let's see, what is he talking about? He's talking about all of the people, Zaknafein's talking about all the Drow that he has trained. And so Zak and Drizzt were sparring, and Drizzt continued to try to make the cross-down block into a more offensive move to no avail. Zak tried to persuade Drizzt that the cross-down is the best move for this specific situation, despite not giving any specific advantage, but rather because it evened the battlefield, right? So
taking away the disadvantage. Yeah.
Exactly. It took away the disadvantage. That wasn't enough for Drizzt. He wanted to have that advantage over top of him, so he kept trying for more and more. Just didn't.
Foreshadowing, that is going to be a trait that Drizzt used in his life quite a bit.
So Zak says he trained many Drow, and this was the best move for this situation. He says that he trained Risen, all of your sisters, and both of your brothers. And there it was. The truth was out. Drizzt, assuming that, or let's see, excuse me, I jumped the gun a little bit there. Drizzt had another brother. Zak is quick to inform that Nalfane, his oldest brother, was killed in battle. Drizzt, assuming his brother died honorably, asked whether his brother was killed by those evil dwarves or gnomes while defending the city. No? Then
nope.
an opponent even more foul, those wicked surface elves.
Dancing under the sun.
No, not them either. Zak snaps. He died at the hands of a drow! And Drizzt just remains silent for a moment and asks, war within the city? and Zach just lets the conversation go. So I like this part because Drizzt is now 16, and it just shows that these vicious customs of the Drow are still a mystery to him. It was a total surprise to him, and so he has been conditioned to hate the dwarves, the gnomes, and those surface elves, but the thought of a Drow killing another Drow just utterly dumbfounded him. He just stopped. He's like, what? That makes no sense. And
almost as if the words didn't even like form properly on his mouth because it was so foreign of a concept.
Right. And so that was just seeing how they are conditioning him. Like I said, he doesn't like the dwarves or the surface elves, the gnomes, but this part of Drow fighting Drow, I guess that would have been what the weapons master would typically. Maybe? I don't know. Like,
perhaps.
Where would that mentality come from?
Well, we'll get into that further down in future chapters where that actually comes from, I think. But yeah, it's definitely part of their training.
Okay.
Where they're, he's led to believe that anything that looks different is bad. We talked earlier in a couple of episodes about how regimes will continue to oppress their people by giving them other people to hate. And because they look different, maybe their skin color is different. Maybe they live in a different area. Maybe they pray to a different god. But as long as it's different, then they use that to drive the divisionary wedge between them and us and them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's definitely, I think, something that more comes with combat training than school, academic learning.
I guess, yeah. So anyway, that was definitely one of the more, I keep wanting to say highlight, but we're talking Drow here. That was my dim light. Jeffrey, what's your dim light this week?
That was pretty dim, but in a good way. my dim light reel is Melee Magthier. One of the most iconic places in Homeland. Even though there are many places that jump off the pages to me, this is the one that holds a spot near and dear for a lot of fans' hearts. And I can't help but think that I'm going to butcher this like I have two left feet trying to do the tango.
Nah.
Melee Magthier, if that is how it's Magthier, Melee Magthier is the warrior school for the Drow of Menzoberranzan, part of the Tir Bresh Academy. It's one of the 3 schools that noble male children were expected to attend, and it's nicknamed the Pyramid because of its shape.
Mm-hmm.
Their education usually began at 20 years of age and continued on for 10 years. Graduates from the Warriors Academy did not hold as high a prestige as those from Sorcerer or Araktinolith, but still held a greater distinction than those who were normal citizens, which we know held no real great distinction to the Drow hierarchy. They rank slightly above surface elves and those evil gnomes and dwarves.
Yeah, I guess.
But I'm not sure we have yet to meet an actual Drow who's not of noble descent. Like, definitely not within the House of Do'Urden. And moving forward, I'm going to try to keep my eyes out to when I first find a normal Drow.
Yeah. No, I never thought about that.
Students spend their first 50 days listening to tales about how elves of the surface world mistreat the Drow, and about 9 years in combat tactics. So that's kind of a shout out to where you were saying, where they learn the hatred. The precepts are put down, at least in concept, before they enter this training, this world. And then the first 50 days, they are just peppered with, tales of why their life is so hard because the surface elves, cast them down here and they're evil. Earlier, I think in one of the chapters, they mentioned that, elves just frolic on the surface, just having fun. But then they reinforce it here that most of the pain and negativity that the Drow face is really because of the surface elves. They're the favored ones. And now the Drow have been forced to come underground and, kind of hide from the world. And they blame their problems on them. A notable training exercise for concentration inside of Melee Magthier, the next 9 years or so deals with combat tactics. A notable training exercise for concentration and self-control involves students sitting naked with their eyes closed as masters dropped poisonous biting centipedes onto them. Like it's not bad enough that you're naked and in front of everybody else being shamed to a point and having that vulnerability exposed, but they're dropping biting poisonous centipedes.
Yeah, at least your eyes are closed.
Right? Like
Well,
that's the worst that could happen, right? No.
maybe
The
it's
first break of calm, like the first outcry, gets you a disciplinary hit. Second break, it's going to get you a more forceful blow. And then for the third strike, you're literally out. It failure will result in expulsion.
ugh.
So
And
you're getting
uh,
bitten. You've got the pain. You're naked. You're around all these people. And if you let anybody know it hurts, you're gonna go ahead and get kicked out because you're not a warrior.
oof. And that's
Now, there's
just
a
dishonor
reason
for
for
that's
this.
just dishonor for your family at that point.
Absolutely. And it's like you would think like it seems kind of needlessly harmful, but there's actually a reason for them to reinforce this concept so hard. A deep meditative state afforded healing capabilities and heightened martial prowess. When you think of the Drow culture, they're almost always at war within the house, without the house, with everyone around them. And you need to be able to heal. Doing the D&D campaigns, you need a short rest, you need a long rest. Well, the more time that you're sleeping, you need guards. You need somebody to protect the party. But if you can meditate, you're not fully out, unaware of your surroundings, and you can still get the same benefits as having that full rest.
Yeah,
Like,
I guess,
ooh.
right? Yeah.
So, they beat these drow so hard that nothing will keep them from getting to that meditative state needed to, heal and heighten their already well-trained martial abilities. The final year of their education was rounded out by spending the first 6 months at Sorcier and the last 6 at Aractinolith. The graduation ceremony was regarded as holy by the followers of Lolth. It takes place inside the hall of Aractinolith. Inside the hall of Aractinolith. The soon-to-be graduates don a ceremonial robe and sit in circles against the wall. No biting centipedes.
Oh, good.
Well, you would think so, but allow me to continue. The matron mistress of the clerical school would coax a narcotic red smoke from the flames and summon a Glabrazu.
Glabrazu.
Yeah, that's a demon that specialized in the temptation of mortals and spread corruption like a virulent disease.
Temptation of mortals. Almost like seductive, like a succubus or something?
Yep. Other priestesses would select males from the outer benches and engage in sexual acts, enhanced by the narcotic smoke. And then, rumor has it that a Glabrazu would also partake in these sexual acts, and that might actually be how Dragloths were created. Have you ever heard of a Dragloth?
A Dragloth. Not by its name, no.
Now, at the risk of jumping too far ahead in this book, we've heard this term Striders yet, or the Driders yet?
I don't know that we heard of Driders at this point.
So then I won't go into that, but a Dragloth is a half demon, half drow monstrosity. So that's why the Glabrazu meeting with the drow, they think it might produce this because it's half drow. However, it's got 4 arms, and the brutes were built like an ogre, yet nimble and graceful like a stage dancer. These things are over 7 feet tall and look horrifying. Like if you saw Mortal Kombat and you remember, what's his name?
The guy with all the arms.
With the 4 arms.
Shoot.
Goodness.
I can't remember.
Johnny Cage beats him up in the movie. I don't know.
It's been forever.
So, Goro.
Goro.
That's his name.
I was about to look it up.
He is essentially like a very handsome looking what is they called Dragloth, because the Dragloth looks almost like a werewolf in the picture that I found, with this long mane of the drow white hair. It's got these 4 arms that are like menacingly hunched forward on this massive muscled body.
I'll have to look into that.
Imagine taking a drow and like feeding it steroids for like years until this thing becomes this massive over muscled genetic abomination, but still maintains the nimble and graceful ability to dance into battle and dice you to ribbons.
Oh man,
yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that it's graduation ceremony is a little different. And with that, Justin, you know what? Just take us into the dungeon delve, buddy.
The Dungeon Delve. It's the part of the show where we link this chapter with our favorite tabletop RPG. So, Jeffrey, I know a couple episodes ago we were talking about that open game license issue. It does sound like they brought that back. They reined it back a little bit.
It's amazing what happens when suddenly people are like, I will take my money elsewhere.
So, yeah, apparently because of everyone's reaction to it, they kind of reined it back. They're like, oh, okay, never mind. We're not going to do this. Now,
psych.
Now, the creators of... what's the other one? It's not D&D. Pathfinder. I know Pathfinder's like a offshoot of, I think it was 3.5 or something like that, from what I understand, of D&D 3.5.
I don't know.
So
I've always heard the term, but never actually. I didn't get into D&D until late in life as far as playing it. So it's like I've always heard the term Pathfinder and the other ones, but it's like I always assumed it must be a whole different kind of game, like the Star Wars one or whatever.
Yeah. So is it Paizo or Piazzo, or it's the company that makes Pathfinder? I'm pretty sure, from what I understand, they're actually working on making a tabletop game that is going to be completely, like, I guess, open license. And It sounds like they're going to keep moving forward with it because I guess the fear is Hasbro already, or Wizards of the Coast, whoever you're talking about, they already came up with this plan. They're probably going to come back with it again. But anyway.
like any great dominating, authoritarian figure, hey, they rolled it out. The people didn't like it, so they pull it back, and they're just waiting for the proper opportunity to slip it in when you don't notice.
Yep. And they're just like, well, they'll mull it over for a while, being, the consumer will mull it over, and, they'll try it again, and maybe this time they'll be like, oh, well, I don't know. Anyway, so in the Dungeon Delve, we look at this chapter with the context of a tabletop RPG. We play 5e, so that's, the context that we're going to take it in. At this point, I don't know. I really want to try AD&D sometime.
Right.
And within this chapter, we're told that my Dungeon Delve it has to do with exhaustion. So in this chapter, we're told that Zack and Drizzt continue to train as hours blended into days, days into 10 days, 10 days into months, and then, as you so eloquently put it, months into more months.
For about 3 years, I think they said the training went on, but I was like, man, I when I say months into years, I feel like I'm giving you too far apart.
Right. No, I gotcha. So they would train until they became exhausted and would train again as soon as they were able to. So they were exhausted. What does that mean? So we're going to take a look. We're going to talk about exhaustion within the context of the game. So
ironically, as you mentioned, exhaustion, for those on the YouTube, you just saw me yawn. It's like the word itself just makes me mechanically yawn. And for the listeners, by all means, come find us on YouTube. The show is now showing us as people.
Hi. So 5e has an exhaustion mechanic within you can find it referenced within the player's handbook. It's referenced a few times when discussing traveling pace and the consumption of food, in that if you travel for too long without sleeping, then you're going to become exhausted, or if you go on for too long without eating, then you're going to become exhausted. But the place where you can get the most information on exhaustion is found, again, in the player's handbook on page 291. It's in Appendix A with all of the conditions, so you have incapacitated, poisoned, paralyzed, all those. It's in that same section. So exhaustion can be caused by, as I was saying, a number of different things at the DM's discretion. But the most common causes are starvation, lack of sleep, or even if there's long-term exposure to extreme cold or extreme heat, even magical effects can cause exhaustion. So a character can attain up to 6 levels of exhaustion, where each level afflicts the character with another negative effect. So let's take a PC and send them through these levels of exhaustion. So I dug
what should we call the PC?
No. Like I made this PC already. He's an actual I went digging through my character sheets, and I found a dwarf cleric that I made. His name is Rorik Fireforge. I haven't actually played with him. I just kind of built him for fun a number of weeks ago. So we have Rorik Fireforge, this dwarf cleric. Let's say that Rorik is stranded out in the tundra surrounding 10 towns. So it's just severe cold. He's exposed to this extreme cold every day unless he finds a way to keep warm. So night 1, he's very cold. He didn't manage to get a fire going. He does have some furs to wrap up in. That's going to be 1 level of exhaustion there. Level 1 of exhaustion gives the PC disadvantage on all ability checks.
Now, how's that going to affect you?
So,
just so the people at home who aren't familiar with it might be. So
every time you do an ability check, you roll a d20 and then you add your modifiers to it. So suppose you rolled like a 10 and then your modifier is +3 if you're, I don't know, trying to find food, right? Let's say survival.
Yep, foraging.
Yep. So you roll a survival check. You roll a 10. You add 3 to it because that's what your modifier is for survival. I don't actually have his character sheet out here or else I could tell you what his modifier is, but... and that would go against the DM's DC. Out in a tundra, it's probably pretty hard to forage for food, so you would probably need like a 15 or higher, at least, I would think, to be able to successfully forage for food. So
then the disadvantage would make them roll a second time.
Of course, that's what I should have been talking about, but I totally forgot the question.
So like even if they hit high up, say you rolled a natural 20 and you're like, man, I found a buffet in the tundra.
Right.
But your second roll hits a 13, then sorry.
It's like, the buffet was actually just a pile of rocks and I'm not about to eat that. So he already had 1 level of exhaustion from this extreme cold. Now his food has run out. So that's another level of exhaustion that he gets. So now he's out at exhaustion level 2. So that means he still has the disadvantage on ability checks that he had from exhaustion level 1. But now at level 2, his speed is halved. So before...
Horrible.
Yeah, which is really bad, especially for a dwarf, because that goes from a 25 down to, I guess, technically like a 12.5, but you round down, so it's basically like 10 feet.
Which means that, so if he's trying to get back to town where the food is, right, because he knows where to find food in the town, well, now he's at a disadvantage for checks. If things are around him, he's not as alert. And he's also has to take twice as long to get there while still facing maybe more problems.
Yeah, so I mean, there could be things out there trying to eat him, wolves or something, but you know, it's still cold. And so maybe tonight it's cold again. He gets another level of exhaustion. That's level 3. And now he also gets disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws. Those are technically not ability checks. So your ability checks would be acrobatics, sleight of hand, stealth. All those are ability checks, but attack rolls and saving throws, they're in a different category. But now he also has disadvantage on those at exhaustion level 3.
So poor Rorik, maybe on exhaustion level 3, is sitting around his lack of fire, right? With lack of food. And so his perception check on these dangerous elements is at a disadvantage. So he might not see the wolves coming.
Right.
He can't run away because he's not that fast.
Right.
So now he's got to stand and fight these wolves and hopefully maybe eat them, except, well, he's got disadvantage on attacking them.
Right.
That's horrible.
And if he starts eating raw meat, that could be a Constitution saving throw there, and he has disadvantage on that too.
Okay, so level 3 is not where you want to go, and that's probably the worst it's going to get, right?
Yeah, it can't get much worse than that, right? Let's take a look. So as it goes on at 4th level, his hit points are halved. So whatever, like he gets half his maximum health.
Easier to kill. Yeah.
At level 5 exhaustion, your speed is reduced to 0. You can't move. I mean,
that's just kind of like then you laying down and being like, you know what, this is too much.
It's like hopefully someone will come and find you at that point. And then at 6th level is death.
So it got worse. Is what you're saying.
It did get worse. Pretty quickly. So I really hope this doesn't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can see though. I mean, from a practical standpoint, how those levels would stack up and make each ensuing level happen quicker and faster.
So hopefully this does not actually happen to Rorik if I ever do get to play with him. Hopefully he takes the time to rest because every time you have a long rest, 1 level of exhaustion is taken away. So if you do get to level 3 exhaustion and then you manage to have a comfortable long rest, now you're at level 2. So you'd still have disadvantage on those ability checks. You would still have, what was level 2? Level 2 was half speed, I think. So you would still have those until you long rest. I mean, essentially, if you're at level 4, you would basically need to rest for 4 days to get rid of that exhaustion.
But you'd have to make constitution saving checks as well, right? Because you don't have food.
Right.
So without having food, you're trying to sleep, but you're having to throw saving throws or an ability check to continue to sleep in order to get better.
Right.
But
so as like if someone came along and found you and brought you back to town, it would basically take 4 days for you to get better. They would have to, take care of you, feed you, keep you warm, all that. But yeah, it's a very fun mechanic that 5e has, and it's very useful if you're trying to simulate some survival type scenario where a group is traversing through a desert or a frozen wasteland. I tried to incorporate it in our campaign a few weeks ago. I don't know if you remember or not. Back in
when we were up in the Gold Chill Mountains.
Up in the Gold Chill Mountains.
Cold was crazy, but luckily we had people who were able to cast Bonfire, and we had it's Kalik, Necromancer, who had the ability to make yurts out of the animal skins that we had. So we at least were able to put a little shelter up inside of that cold place and still find a source of fire. And then I believe it was Vadi, who is our
bard. No, not bard. Sorry,
no.
She's a hunter.
Is she a warlock?
Ranger?
She's not a warlock, is she? Ranger?
No. Sorry, yeah. Warlock.
Warlock.
She's very rangery, but she is a warlock. Yeah.
I say she can forage, so it had the ability to help us with food that we, were able to supplement our stores and not have to face several levels of exhaustion.
Yeah. So I should have been a little harder on you guys with that one, but it created that angst that I was looking for. You guys were like really worried, like, oh man, are we gonna, not necessarily survive the night, but you were looking at that level of exhaustion and you're just like, oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, we got to experience it a bit firsthand, too, because Shadrick is an anxious bard who is very unable to sleep most of the time and self-inflicts his levels of exhaustion upon himself.
Which, if a character decides to do that, I'm not going to say no. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to sleep well tonight. Here's some inspiration. That takes away one of the disadvantages on your ability checks.
Yeah, but I love that mechanic of Shadrick. Like, he's not your atypical bard. He's not your typical bard. He takes it a little further. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So for me, when I looked into the dungeon delve part, I wanted to pick out Fairy Fire. And for those who play Dungeons and Dragons and aren't adept at the nuances of combat, I feel like I can hear a groan coming as soon as I mention Fairy Fire.
Yep.
Yep, you in the back, right back there, over there. Now that camera, we can see you. It's not the most dazzling spell like Guiding Bolt, Eldritch Blast, or Fireball. However, when it comes to the mechanics of combat, I think it's an extremely useful support spell. Mm-hmm. It's a first-level evocation cast by bards and druids. It's got a range of 60 feet, and it takes 1 action for casting time. That's 6 seconds of time. The target is each object within a 20-foot cube. So it's generally best to cast this at a group before they get a chance to spread out and find comfortable attacking positions. Each object inside of that 20-foot cube within the range of 60 feet is outlined in a blue, green, or violet light. So when they mentioned it, Zach Nafane hitting Drizzt with it, you get the purplish hue. He went with the violet light.
Okay.
I mention that because at least in the 5e, you get to choose the color, that's a little neat. You get to add your own little flair to your own little like rave party while it's going on, and you can attack. Any creature that fails a dexterity save is going to be outlined in that color. For the duration, they're going to shed a dim light in a 10-foot radius. Now that makes me chuckle because I never considered that if you had the ability to make bad guys flee, intimidation, maybe by like Rock, our barbarian. Yeah. If I cast dim light on the bad guys and we make them flee, well, that gives my character the ability to see in darkness just a little bit better.
Right. And you just imagine like this person trying to hide somewhere and you just see this faint aura coming out from behind like a rock or something.
like I see you. So their duration, any attack roll against the affected creature that's glowing during the duration is going to have an advantage if the attacker can see it. So, like you mentioned, if he's hiding, I can see him. I
Right.
just can't see. I know where he is, but
Right.
I can't see him. So it's not going to help me to attack him if he's hidden behind a wall.
Okay.
But I know where to go to see him so that I
Right.
can still get the advantage on
Right.
attack.
Which is huge. So many people don't think like they don't think about those support spells that
Yep.
maybe they don't do damage, but I mean being able to roll advantage for an attack is huge. I mean it doubles your chances.
Now, I'm not sure. Maybe you know a little bit better as the TM. Is that every single attack? So, like, my character does 2 attacks per round. Would I still get the advantage on attack if Fairy Fire lights him up with my second attack, or is it only my first attack and every first attack of the character on it?
I mean, honestly, if I'd have to look at the spell, but if that's an effect that's constantly running, then I would think it would be every attack.
Yeah. So that's like even more vicious.
Right, because Rock has a multi-attack with his
Yep.
nacho axe, and that would be devastating if he rolled advantage on both of them.
Yeah. I mean, the damage you can do from that is crazy.
Yeah.
But then going a step further than that, it also, the creature or the object is not allowed to benefit from being invisible.
Hmm.
So if you have someone or something that can turn invisible in the middle of a battle and it's hit with fairy fire, well, not invisible, it's still glowing in light so you can see it.
That would be pretty cool. That would be pretty like I just imagine like throwing a horde of something at you guys and it's just like, "Oh, there's 2 of them," and then you cast fairy fire on them and suddenly there's like, "Oh, there's 7 of them."
Well, see, that wouldn't work because you have to be able to see the target to catch.
Oh.
Now, this gets into the whole deep dive of it, right? There's a lot of discretion in the forums between how this works, and I'll explain that because,
Oh.
like, for me, what catches my interest is the fact that you can light up objects with it, right?
Okay.
And it's something I never really considered until now. And what kind of objects could you light up with it, and what advantage would it be to give you to trying to strike it? I did go into a few online forums, and it's not going to surprise many people to know that it was really a lot of people just arguing about this very topic and resulting in people saying, well, it's the DM's discretion. Because a lot of them were saying, well, if there's something hiding in that 20-foot cube, it then becomes lined with fairy fire. And the other people saying, well, no, you have to be able to see the target in order to cast it. And going back and forth. So I couldn't actually find a proper delineation between the two.
Well, as I'm reading the spell here, it says each object in a 20-foot cube within range is outlined in green, blue, green, or violet. Okay, so it's all the objects in that square are lit up.
Mhm.
And then it says any creature in the area when the spell is cast is also outlined if they fail a dex saving throw. So
Yeah,
I would
that
think,
would be terrifying then to be like, I see that guy, cast fairy fire, and then whoosh.
yeah, then there's
a whole
more.
horde like,
Now, yeah, it is only a 20-foot cube, so the chances of you landing it directly on that many that many creatures would be pretty insane. But I guess it could happen. But yeah,
so then,
it's,
but
yeah.
why would you want to outline objects then?
I don't know.
See, I thought about this, and as I was tooling around with it a little bit. So two of the examples that came to my mind where it could be useful was like, say there's a lock on a gate, and your party is in a hurry to try to escape before being caught, murdered, or mauled. Right?
Okay.
You're running from a bad guy. You could light the lock with fairy fire while your party mate tries to strike it or break it because they have the advantage on the attack roll there.
Okay, huh?
The other example, and
Yeah.
I mean, well, a little brush on the shoulder there. It's Robin Hood, right? So think about the old tale of Robin Hood where he enters the archery contest. If you were one of his merry men, you could cast fairy fire on the target and he'd have an advantage in shooting at it. Now, I think everyone else would notice that the glow of light suddenly surrounding the
Right.
target.
No,
And now
all eyes are on Robin Hood. They're not on the target.
The flare and flourish. Like, now that I think of it, right, everybody that notices it would also still have the same advantage. So, like, you'd only
Right.
really be able to use it on that last shot where he put the arrow inside the other arrow.
Well, that's how he did it.
Yeah, that'd be fairy fire. Yeah, if you guys at home can think of any other like cool examples on how to use an object to cast it on an object, or why you would use fairy fire on an object, I know one of the guys was like, "Well, mimics, right? Maybe you could find a mimic or like cast fairy fires. They're magical weapons we can't see." If you guys have any cool options like that, anything that pops into mind, go ahead and shoot us an email at drizzdoneright.com, at drizzdoneright@gmail.com, or join that Discord and put it in the chat. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, as a DM, it does get boring if it's just like, oh, run over here /him, run over here /him. But it's like when you come up with these unique ways of using spells and everything, even if it's not like by the book, even if it's not raw rules, it's like, you know, I kind of like to use the whole like rule of cool kind of thing where it's just like, hey, it doesn't say that exactly, but that's a really cool idea. Let's go with that. And, you know, I might make you roll for it or something, but.
No, I'm with you. I mean, that's, again, one of the reasons I think that for me, Ari Salvatore's writing was so amazing is because of the ways that they use the concepts I'm familiar with, like Cast Darkness earlier in the, what was it, chapter 1, where Dynan throws it on the bugbears and they're trying to run. Like, they can't see where they're going and they tumble into each other. Yeah. Look at the causing chaos. So, wow, I always thought of Cast Darkness just so that I could run away. I could hide from other things. Right. It's like there's so many other ways to use it. Like when they attacked House DeVere and they blotted out the entire house with multiple globes of darkness. Like, wow, that is cool. Very cool. Yeah. So it's like I like that as well. I think it's neat to find like inventive approaches to using something, and I think that Salvatore does it all the time. Yeah, and you know, we bring him up every once in a while, but I feel like we need to give him some more credit as we do this show. I feel like we don't bring his name up enough. Like, just what an awesome author! What a privilege it is to. I think the wording we use in the credits of our YouTube video is just like, thank you for this sandbox for us to play in. An homage that we give to you, Mr. Salvatore. So thank you so much. And thank you, all you listeners out there, for listening. That's going to do it for this episode. So thank you. Remember that if you like the show, make sure to give us a rating on whatever platform you listen to us on. Also, make sure that you're getting the most out of this podcast. Make sure that you pick up a copy of the book and read along with us. Reading is such a drag. Flipping pages, tapping the edge of your Kindle. Who wants all those paper cuts or calluses? Why not pick up your own audiobook and listen to it while keeping your fingertips baby soft and keeping your eyes free for other things like gnomes, evil creatures. When you finish chapter 8, feel free, shoot us an email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com, log into the Discord, join in the discussion. Remember, link is in the podcast description, and we would love to hear from all of you. We would love to hear from you. So it's been a blast, but now it's time to say goodbye. That's it. Wrap it up, put a bow on it. These chapters are starting to stack up quicker than the body count of a Drow prince. Oh, man. Farewell, guys and gals. Play fair and be well.